Just catching up on some emails. Busy show tonight. In the big question, does the left have a problem with free speech? We'll debate that with ex-Labour MP George Galloway and broadcaster and model Leilani Dowding, someone who feels that her free speech has been curtailed in the last couple of years. My Mark Meets guest is the reality star and actress who appeared in Elf, Law & Order and Celebrity Big Brother, Marissa Jade, live at 10. We've got the latest on the situation in America, the trial of the century, Johnny Depp. We're going to speak to the queen of US showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Plus, another great British game show. And in the news agenda with my panel is Lord Frost right to say that the state is now too big. Also, is romance dead? We'll discuss that later as well. Now, in my big opinion, in 2 minutes' time, we've got to end the hysteria around climate change. So a busy 2 hours. We've got information for you, debate, entertainment, and a few surprises along the way. You won't want to miss a second. First up, the headlines with me all evening, Tamsin Roberts.
Mark, thank you. Good evening from the GB newsroom. The MP accused of watching pornography in the Commons says he's resigning. Neil Parish admitted looking at adult material twice in Parliament, once deliberately. A spokesperson for his local Conservative association thanked the MP for his service and said they supported his decision. Mr Parish told the BBC he had a moment of madness and that he's not proud of his actions.
The situation was that funnily enough, it was tractors that I was looking at, and so I did get into another website that had a sort of very similar name, and I watched it for a bit, which I shouldn't have done. But my biggest crime, is that on another occasion I went in a second time.
And that was deliberately?
That was deliberate.
And was that in the Select Committee or in the Commons chamber?
That was sitting, waiting to vote.
The Prime Minister has told President Zelensky he's more committed than ever to reinforcing Ukraine. In a phone call to his Ukrainian counterpart, Boris Johnson says the UK will continue to provide additional military aid to the country. It's as Ukraine's defence ministry says Russia is increasing the intensity of their offensive in the east of the country. Meanwhile, residents of the southern port city of Mariupol have spoken of the total devastation of their homes.
It was my home, or what's left of it after the shellings. Everything burned, so now I have become homeless. I have nowhere to go. Now I live in my friend's place. He sheltered me for some time. Everything is gone. All that's left is the toilet, door and hallway. Nothing more.
Tell me, was it a necessity to bomb civilians with such bombs? You have to be a fanatic to do it. No shame, no conscience, no feeling of proportion, nothing. They made the whole block homeless in old age.
Ukrainian police, meanwhile, say they found a mass grave containing the bodies of men who were apparently bound, gagged and tortured. It's after the US accused Russian President Vladimir Putin of brutality and depravity in his 2-month invasion of the country. Kiev says more than 1,000 bodies have been discovered in or around the town of Bucha so far, where it's alleged Russia has committed numerous war crimes. Moscow rejects the allegation. Police searching for a 33-year-old woman who went missing in Lancashire a week ago say they have found a body. Katie Kenyon was last seen getting into a Ford Transit van in Burnley 8 days ago. Formal identification is yet to take place, but officers say the family of the mother of two has been informed of the discovery. This is GB News on TV, online and DAB+ radio. Now let's get straight back to Mark Dolan tonight.
On a very busy Mark Dolan tonight, do the left have a problem with free speech? We'll debate that with ex-Labour MP George Galloway and broadcaster and model Leilani Dowding, who believes that her free speech has been curtailed over the last couple of years. My Mark Meets guest is the reality star and actress who appeared in the movie Elf, the TV series Law & Order, Gossip Girl and The Good Wife, as well as Celebrity Big Brother. Marissa Jade is live at 10. And she tells me her inspiring story. She's quite a personality, let me tell you. In the news agenda with my panel, is Lord Frost right that the state is now too big? Also, is romance dead? Plus, US news with the queen of US showbiz and royal reporting, Kinsey Schofield. We'll get the latest on the trial of the century between film star Johnny Depp and his ex, Amber Heard. And reacting to the big stories of the day is my amazing panel. Comedian Francine Lewis, former editor of Labelist, broadcaster and journalist, and a good friend of mine, Peter Edwards. And joining us very shortly, he's stuck on a train, but he'll be here. In fact, I'm told he's in the building. It's the wonderful Andre Walker. Oh, there you go. I thought you'd been cancelled. He's quick, that boy. As always, I want to hear from you throughout the programme. So drop me a line between now and 11, mark@gbnews.uk. You know the golden rule of the show. What is the golden rule of the show? We don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. A jam-packed 2 hours of entertainment to come. Big opinions, big stories, plenty of journalism and big personalities too. And it is Saturday night, so let's have a laugh, shall we? You have my permission to grab something cold and bubbly from the fridge, or fire up the kettle and tear open the chocolate penguins. Yum, yum. And let's get to work. You might as well face it. You're addicted to doom. A new project has been launched to address rising climate anxiety among students at the University of East Anglia. Students in Norwich told BBC News they felt hopelessness, anger and despair about climate change, and a new survey published this week found that 45% of UK students worry about climate change once a week or more. One particular student said that she'd experienced depression after being overwhelmed by the scale of the problems facing the planet. And, wait for it, she developed disordered eating when trying to cut out food packaged with plastic. Some youngsters are seeking therapy and are even afraid to have kids. Well, I had kittens when I read this. There's an entire generation of terrified teenagers and tortured 20-somethings who think Kent will be underwater tomorrow afternoon. Let's hope that doesn't happen. That would ruin my trips to Whitstable. What a place. Have you ever tried their oysters? Best in the world. The more I look at the human race, the more I think we are unevolving. Homo sapiens, the Latin term to describe this species, have prevailed in the animal kingdom. We've won, folks. We control everything. We've constructed ships that penetrate the high seas. We've built entire cities in the desert. We've found cures for disease. We've clothed, fed and educated ourselves. We've crafted weapons, sent a man to the moon, and I can send a photo to my Auntie Patsy in California that will arrive on her smartphone in less than a second. And we've become a hardy bunch too, withstanding natural disaster, disease and war. Now, war is an unfortunate but immutable characteristic of humanity. It turns out we fight each other, and we always will. And look, here's the thing. If you remember the First and Second World Wars, our British and Allied heroes were so heroic. Trench battles and brave soldiers running into no man's land to face almost certain death against an unforgiving and unstoppable German war machine. 17-year-old boys took to the skies in Spitfire aeroplanes with no certainty that they would come back. At times, the statistics suggested they wouldn't. 7 decades on, and our current generation of youngsters lie awake at night worrying about problems that don't even exist yet. That's when they're not worrying about pronouns or which comedian or top author to cancel next. Now, I am personally concerned about rising temperatures. I'm no climate change denier, and I think we have a great opportunity, including economically, to go green. But we can't do it on our own, and this climate hysteria is scientifically debatable and deeply counterproductive. Young people have been brainwashed at school and at university and via mainstream media to think that Armageddon is around the corner. But does this not have a familiar ring to you? What about the deadly pandemic that was going to kill everyone, but which turned out to be very nasty, yes, and dangerous for a small few, but which was mild or non-existent for most? I fully understand why older and more vulnerable people still wish to take protections, distancing, wearing a face covering. It's my view that the data doesn't back it up, but hey, it's a free country. But when I watch children and young people wandering around in masks outside at the tail end of a pandemic, and with Omicron, the latest variant, being milder than the gags in an episode of Last of the Summer Wine, my heart sinks. Why the hell have so many young people been terrified of COVID? Because they, like the rest of us, have been subjected to 2 years of propaganda. The propagation of fear has been government policy, all craftily executed by those terrifying ideological fanatics at the so-called behavioural nudge groups, like Communist Party member and COVID zealot Dr. Susan Mitchie. There she is, the Mitch is back. COVID posed almost no risk statistically to young people, but the template of fear was established. There are stories of toddlers and young children in the US screaming and bursting into tears when relatives or school teachers now remove a face mask. Well done, everyone. And this template of fear and culture of catastrophizing has been transferred to the climate. Sure, let's recycle, let's not waste energy, it's expensive enough as it is. And who doesn't want cleaner air? And let's decarbonise, as long as it's in the national interest and doesn't unduly impact the economy. But I'll be honest with you folks, if America, China, India, Brazil and others don't change their ways, then our efforts will be a complete waste of time. We'll be done for anyway. Now, I don't think that will happen. The instinct for self-preservation is deeply embedded in the human psyche. If the threat of global warming grows, all nations will be united around a common enemy. And I've got no doubt that we will innovate and deploy our colossal resources to handle the situation. But whatever happens, it's time to end the fear-mongering. Whether it's climate change, COVID, or even nuclear war with this monster, Vladimir Putin, we've got to just say no to being terrified. This man wants us to be afraid too. But you know as well as I do that the only thing we must fear most is fear itself. And if young people who are the future of our society, who are the future of humanity, spend their lives terrified about the future, then we're all doomed. I've got some breaking news for you. Life is dangerous. It always has been, and it always will. Given the fact that we used to kill each other with spears, and given that back in the day a fever, a toothache or an infected finger could be a death sentence, we've actually never been safer. We've never had it so good. And the nuclear deterrent means that there's still no logical strategic advantage in one country nuking another. It's all saber-rattling from Mr. Putin, who seeks to scare the bejesus out of us, something Hitler tried to do, but the fearless Winston Churchill wasn't having any of it. And the rest is history. I'm afraid we're all going to go one day. So whilst we're here, let's live a little, shall we? Let's have some fun. Let's be courageous. Let's be bold. And let's understand that peril, risk and danger are not something to be afraid of. They are the very essence of life itself. That life is hard, unpredictable and suffused with risk is what makes it worth living. Cowering in front of your TV screen, being fed propaganda and waiting for the apocalypse isn't living at all and will likely hasten our departure. We'll all probably die of anxiety. It's time to reject state-sponsored fear-mongering. We've seen it with COVID and climate is next. And it's time for this snowflake generation to man up, to woman up and grow a pair of balls. Do you want to be a passenger in life? Or do you want to be in the driving seat? Life is difficult and it always has been. And that's why it's so great. Reacting to the big stories of the day is my all-star panel. I'm delighted to say comedian Francine Lewis is with us. We also have broadcaster, journalist and former editor of Labour List, Peter Edwards, and presenter and political commentator Andre Walker. Francine, if I could start with you, is it Armageddon for the world?
I think it is at the moment. I mean, I do worry about the future generation. My kids worry about everything. They're always saying, oh, Mum, the world's going to end. We can't do this because we could die. And, yeah, they're worried about the world being blown up at the moment. And it's just something we didn't have to fear so much. I mean, it's all the adverts you see as well. You know, if you find you in your Wii, you know, and it scares the kids, and it's always adverts about cancer and illnesses. And I think it's too much. And I think kids need to relax. And now we've had the whole COVID thing. I actually feel very sorry for them. And, you know, so many kids now are suffering with anxiety. Anxiety's through the roof. And
you know what, Mrs. I'm not scared of climate change. I'm not scared of Putin because I live with my Aussie.
It was good to hear her back on the national television airwaves. Listen, Peter Edwards, it's wrong to catastrophise about climate change, isn't it?
Well, I think people are right to be worried. I have to say, I thought your monologue was nonsense, or at least you might say a lot of hot air. I mean, to run through the points you're making, I think young people, they're right to be worried about climate change. I'm not sure it should put them off their dinner in the way you described, but it's right to be worried about the future. I'm not sure what the link is with COVID, but I think if you play down the impact of COVID after more than 130,000 excess deaths in the first year and a half of the pandemic, then I think you're just not on the same page as the rest of the country. And yes, while we know Susan Michie, one of the government scientists, has apparently quite a left-wing background, you know, last time I checked, Sajid Javid, the Conservative Health Secretary, was not a member of the Communist Party, nor was Patrick Vallance, nor was Chris Whitty. This is nothing to do with communism, which none of us would defend anyway. But I think to lump together COVID and climate change when sea levels are rising, it just seems bizarre and it doesn't stack up. And I think that the fundamental difference perhaps between you and I on the pandemic is that I think lockdown measures were justified and should have happened earlier. But that was not because 50 million people were going to die. Remember, the justification was to protect the NHS. And that largely was done. The NHS did not collapse in a crisis.
Well, I believe the concomitant of lockdowns has been inflation of 7%. It will be 17% eventually. 7% inflation and a cost of living crisis. We've been printing money to pay for your wonderful lockdowns, Peter. But just picking up on the supposedly exaggerated tone of my monologue, don't you take the view that if kids are seeking therapy or are having eating disorders because they're worried about the climate, we've gone too far?
Well, let's think about who we are. I think kids, everyone right to be worried about climate change, but ultimately it'd make me wonder a bit about the household, what they're hearing at home, what they're hearing at school, if climate change is generating an eating disorder. If it is, I mean, I think we're all right to be concerned about the future, but as I said, it shouldn't put you off your lunch.
Right, well, that's a fair point. We can agree on that. Andre Walker, do you think that the template for fear was established during the pandemic and will now just be transferred to climate panic?
Well, if you look at the great Chinese dynasties that suddenly disappeared despite being some of the richest and most powerful countries on earth, it's because they were weighed down by government bureaucracy and risk aversion. And I see a huge level of danger in that. If we wrap people in cotton wool and kind of deal with one immediate problem, as an example, stopping people walking the streets, yes, OK, made the coronavirus less transmissible. But what it also did was destroyed the British economy, destroyed public finances and caused a significant problem with young people's education in this country. They reckon your average working class child will be £100,000 worse off by their end of their life because the gap in education has got even bigger. And if you're talking about the nervousness amongst young people, I walked out one day during a climate change protest and children and young people were shouting, "You'll die of old age, I'll die of climate change." They genuinely believe they are about to burn to death, which is absolute and total nonsense. And I think that what we're doing is preventing our society from building up its tolerance. We're preventing our society from innovating technologically to deal with pollution, and we're preventing young people from being robust enough to deal with the modern world. I think Western society is self-aborting, and that is the great risk.
Well, it's my view that there are strong parallels between panic around COVID and panic around climate. Peter doesn't agree, and that's what my show is all about. Diverse opinions. What's yours? mark@gbnews.uk. Get your thoughts to me right now. Is it okay that children are suffering from anxiety and depression as a result of alleged global warming and climate change? We'll get to that very shortly. You'll get to your responses. Also, in our news agenda later this hour, Lord Frost has said in the Telegraph today that the state is now too big. It is an overreaching bureaucracy in our lives and it must be scaled back. We'll speak to George Galloway, lifelong socialist, about that later this hour. But next, in the big opinion, and it's a very, very important question, we'll be looking at Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter. Do the left have a problem with free speech? We don't have a problem here at GB News. Keep your opinions coming. mark@gbnews.uk. A busy show. See you in 2. Big response to my big opinion. I think we've got to end the fear-mongering over climate. But what's your view? Alan says, dear Mark, children are not being motivated to enhance their self-esteem. This solves most problems. Alan, I couldn't agree with you more. I do talks in schools very often, and I always encourage youngsters to actually build their self-confidence and develop their communication skills, because every single one of our youngsters has a talent and has something to offer. Well said. Janice says, Mark, Peter Edwards, your panellist, is wrong about Susan Mitchie. She's a paid-up member of the British Communist Party. In other words, a Marxist. Kids are scared stiff. So am I, and I'm 60, but I'm not going to stop eating meat, not stopping driving my car, especially as my mum, who's 90 plus, lives in Berkshire, and I live in Lincolnshire. Janice, thank you for that, and I send my best wishes to your mum. How about Andrew, who says, dear Mark, great monologue as always. It appears to me that the left are happy to terrify the young as they see them as easy to manipulate into their votes. Let's face it, the left doesn't know if it's Arthur or Martha. I think that might have been Arthur or Martha, little typo there, but I get your point, Andrew. In the 80s, it was keep the minds open, now it's close them. Andrew, thank you for your brilliant and well put email. Chris says, dear Mark, when I was growing up, I was worried about nuclear. We had cartoons and it was all very, very evocative of a doomsday scenario. Betty says, dear Mark, children should be allowed to be children and not be subjected to any news items regarding COVID, war or climate change. And it should certainly apply to under 5s. Well, look, let's get to more of your emails very shortly. But it's time now for the big question, in which we tackle a major news story of the day from multiple points of view. Tonight, the news of Elon Musk's $42 billion takeover of Twitter has been met with shock and disappointment from a variety of left-leaning Hollywood celebrities, including the actresses Jamila Jamil and Mia Farrow, who have left the platform. With widespread opprobrium among progressive commentators in relation to Musk's takeover, does the left have a problem with free speech? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome George Galloway, former Labour Party and Respect MP. George is also a broadcaster, writer, and is now the leader of the Workers' Party of Britain. I'm also delighted to welcome model, writer and broadcaster Leilani Dowding, who takes the view that freedom of speech has been curtailed in the course of the last 2 years. Leilani, let me start with you. Does the left have a problem with free speech?
I think it does. You've seen all these like lefty liberal meltdowns over Elon's takeover, big tech, which has particularly been censoring a lot of people over the last 2 years, is run by the super lefties in the USA. Then you have like the lefty organizations like the Center for Countering Digital Hate, run by, it was started up by Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff, Morgan Sweeney, who's now gone on to be his Chief of Staff, and he's very lefty. And you think, oh, it's, against digital hate, it must be a really good cause against trolling and bullying. But when you actually look at what it's about stopping this disinformation and misinformation, which is all down to interpretation. And, these are very, very left-leaning people that have started these fact checkers up and these kinds of organisations. So it is a very lefty thing to start curtailing free speech.
George Galloway, you are a gifted and renowned communicator, both as a broadcaster and politician. Do you think the left has a problem with free speech?
I really hope you haven't confused me with one of these lefties that we've just been speaking about, because I agreed with all of that. You could only say they were lefties if you think Keir Starmer's chief of staff is a lefty. And frankly, that's absurd. I'm a socialist. I'm not a lefty. I'm not a liberal. And I hope that you haven't booked me in error. I absolutely regard the so-called liberals as the major danger to freedom and freedom of speech in particular in this country and indeed on this planet. And the hysteria that you alluded to over the takeover of Twitter by Elon Musk is a very good case in point. First of all, the platform was owned by those splendid Democrats, Morgan Stanley Bank, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Vanguard, and all kinds of other rum characters. So the switch from them to Elon Musk concerns me not at all. And Elon Musk has come to power in Twitter, pledging to make it more free. Who could or should disagree with that? I believe that life should be a marketplace of ideas. The problem is the market is rigged. And you found that in GBNews. It's rigged by the people already in control of the media, in control of the society. And they stand on any flower which begins to grow so that no one ever gets to see it or smell its splendid aroma. And that's what we must fight against. Let 1,000 flowers bloom in the garden and see which the people gravitate towards. That's where I stand, Mark.
Well, yes, and George, you certainly weren't booked in error. In fact, your booking during the week was a triumph for my team, because you are a great communicator, you're a broadcaster, you've always benefited from and exercised your right to free speech, including famously to the American authorities a few years back. So what is the difference between a liberal lefty and a socialist?
Well, if you scratch a liberal, it's increasingly clear you find a tyrant underneath. They are the people that are seeking to dictate to people how they should think, what they can read, which books should be banned, even classics being taken off the shelves, which statues must be toppled, and of course, whether people can lie down in the park as opposed to pretending to exercise in the park during the lockdown, which had so many deleterious consequences, as you yourself have been expressing this evening. The liberals are, in fact, the biggest threat to freedom in the land. And you're right, I mean, they have come to be seen as the left. And if they're left, then count me out.
Leilani Dowding, is it helpful to use this metric of left versus right?
You know what? In a way, it's not, because I used to think I was more on the left. But what's happened is it seems like the left has just gone further and further left. And I'm still exactly where I was, but now I'm considered by the left to be a right-wing conspiracy nutjob theorist. So, it's like, it's just gone very strange. All Elon Musk wanted to do was say, let's make Twitter impartial and neutral, and then you have all this outrage, and it's just so strange. It's like this whole inversion of every word. Liberal should mean free and open, but liberals, I mean, you say something that they don't want you to say, and it is a massive attack. And I think that a lot of people that were left are finding that they are actually being attacked by the super left, and wondering where actually they stand.
Well, indeed. So, George, what are your thoughts about the future of free speech? Can Elon Musk save free speech, or is it now on life support?
It is on life support. I don't know him. I don't know his intentions, really. But I'd rather have a man that's promising more freedom on Twitter than people who have demonstrated their absolute contempt for freedom. So that someone who believes that, for example, that a man is a man and a woman is a woman, and find it very easy to define a woman as an adult human female, are suddenly either subject to a deluge of abuse and complaints and even suspension or being struck off. This kind of madness has to stop. And I honestly believe that the great majority of the people in Britain agree with that point of view. The problem is the zealots have got the microphones. The zealots have got the handle on what gets out there and how people are characterized if they take a different point of view. I listened in pain to what Leilani just said. All I can answer is join the club. Someone like me, who for more than 50 years, getting on for 55 years, has been an activist in the socialist movement, gets no platformed as being some kind of reactionary right-winger. It is painful, but what can we do? We have to struggle against it. And I'm glad you've given Leilani and me a chance this evening on prime time to do that. We just must keep on. Even if we are a mouse squeaking against the wind, we have to keep squeaking.
Well, the issue is, Leilani Dowding, that woke liberals seem to have infiltrated the media, certainly large portions of it, academia, schools, universities, big business and politics.
Well, absolutely, and add big tech into that as well. And it's just a recipe for disaster. It means that free speech is being curtailed. I mean, you just have to look at what happened with Ofcom as well, telling people and directing the way in which dialogue could go and how you have to follow a certain narrative. And what I worry about is the online harms bill, because all of these things, they're wrapped up in protecting people against bullying and trolling. But when you actually scratch the surface, it's more about curtailing free speech.
Well, I've always found Ofcom to be very even-handed, certainly in my broadcasting over the last couple of years, but I take your point. It's all about opinions. Let's bring my panel in on this. Peter Edwards, former editor of Labour List. I wonder whether he's a lefty. Andre Walker, columnist and broadcaster, and Francine Lewis, TV personality and impressionist. First of all, Andre Walker, does the left have a problem with free speech?
Well, I find it thoroughly depressing, and I've said this previously on George Galloway's show, about the amount that we agree on, simply because I think that there are a group of people who want to make Britain a better place, who want to work for the people in this country, and they have a disagreement on the way of doing it. But I think then there are a group of insidious people who just want to be tyrants, who just want to tell people what to do and want to change society in a way that I think is really, really unfair and unacceptable. The idea that having a penis and testicles does not make you a man is so evidently ludicrous that I just don't understand how it's a debate. But I do think that these are people who are, probably don't have very interesting lives themselves, and actually they just want to talk down, belittle and insult people to make themselves feel better. And actually, I think that their aim is to destroy society and not make it better for people. And I think that's why time and time again you will see somebody like me, who's the Thatcherite, quite like some of the things that George Galloway says, even though, in normal circumstances that would be a ludicrous proposition.
Peter Edwards, are you a lefty or a socialist?
I would say I'm both, and it's perfectly reasonable to be both in the Labour Party. And I disagree with pretty much everything George Galloway said. He's a discredited figure who praised Saddam Hussein, went on Russia Today and Kremlin radio. So I agree, perhaps only in one area, that George is certainly illiberal. And I think there's always this kind of myth that free speech is being destroyed, but we're having free speech now. I mean, Britain is a great place, and I note that Andre is against people who kind of personalise the debate. And then what was your phrase, Andre? Was it small minds?
Here come the insults.
Small minds.
Here come the insults from Alan Partridge, the Alan Partridge of GB News.
Andre.
Aha!
Andre, that was scripted, and interrupting me after 10 seconds doesn't make you
Here we go, throw the insults. Come on, let's get on with it. So this is what you always do.
Andre, stop.
Aha!
Andre, you need to bestow upon Peter the freedom of speech that you treasure so much. Finish your point, Peter.
Well, I think Andre is against personal abuse, and then he interrupts me, shouts out juvenile comments, and calls people who disagree with him.
Isn't that the point?
But hold on. If Andre is in favour of free speech, why does he talk over other people?
Well, let's go back to...
I don't actually think many...
Leilani?
I don't think there are many news outlets that actually let people have that much of a debate or discuss certain topics that GBNews has allowed people to discuss over the last year or so. So I disagree with that. I really don't think there are that many news outlets that will have a good open conversation discussion the way GBNews does. And that's what makes GBNews different, is that you do that. So I think there is a problem with the mainstream media, and I think there's a massive problem with social media and the censorship there. I mean, I have been banned, shadow banned, thrown off Instagram and all the rest of it for just having an opinion. But if you want to put something that's superficial, materialistic, anything like that on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, everyone loves that. But you want to talk about anything and deep-rooted subjects, and you're not going along with the narrative, you're in big trouble.
Francine Lewis, are we letting the right off the hook in relation to free speech?
I just feel the extreme woke left are just wanting to censor anything that we say. I mean, they criticise everything and anything. I mean, we're being called transphobic, homophobic, misogynist, and this is why people are left politically homeless. We're not allowed to say anything. So I think it's really, really tough for us to have any freedom of speech.
George Galloway, Elon Musk tweeted the following just 2 days ago: "The far left hates everyone, themselves included." Do you share that view?
Well, that's certain. I mean, the teenage scribbler that you've got on from the Labour Party kind of made my point. All he could do was hurl insults, in this case at me. He didn't actually engage with any of the issues that I had raised. He just wants me cancelled. And this cancel culture is undoubtedly the province of what calls itself, at least, the left. Now, I think it's laughable for Starmerites to describe themselves as socialists and so on, but I don't care very much about them. What I do care about is that if you censor people, then how can you possibly know that the course you're following is the right one? If this censorship had been applied in the run-up to the Iraq war, then I would have been unable to tell people that Tony Blair was leading us to disaster in Iraq. The Labour leader is going to end up killing millions of people and sowing extremist Islamism all over the world. It would have been impossible for me to do that. I'd have been banned, shadow banned, cancelled. Can't you see where I'm coming from in this? Unless you know the point of view of all of the ideas and people who have those ideas, you can't know that your ideas are the right one. You can't know that the policy your government is following is the right one because you haven't heard the alternatives. And liberals are determined to restrict to the prevailing orthodoxy, an inch or two. They pretend to knock hell out of each other in the House of Commons over who had a light ale at a party during the lockdown. They're both, of course, utterly hypocritical in how they approach that lockdown. And the synthetic fire and fury that they exhibit is supposed to be democracy in action. Meanwhile, everyone else on the left, on the right, who has a fundamentally different point of view to them is locked out, banned, shadow banned and cancelled.
Now, Peter Edwards, many on the left will deny the existence of cancel culture, but here are a couple of examples for you. A statue of David Livingstone in Glasgow was cited for removal because he worked in a mill that may have used West Indian cotton when he was 10 years of age, despite the fact that he was a staunch abolitionist in his adult life. In March 2021, the Mumford & Sons guitarist Winston Marshall effectively lost his career as a musician for tweeting that a book critical of Antifa, the organisation behind Black Lives Matter, was worth a read or of interest. We've seen an Asda till worker lose his job for sharing a Billy Connolly sketch. And of course, they tried to cancel the best-selling author of the 20th century, J.K. Rowling. So cancel culture is alive and well, and many people watching this will say it belongs to the left.
Well, I think that's nonsense, but I just want to go back a moment to what George Galloway said. George suggests it's insulting to point out the facts. It's not insulting to say George Galloway went on Russia Today and Russian TV. It may be horrifying, but it's certainly not insulting. When I got asked to go on Russian TV about 5 years ago, I declined, as I think many people would, because the crimes of Vladimir Putin don't go back 8 weeks. They go back 8 years, 10 years, a lot more than that. And then coming back to what's going on in the UK, I mean, I just don't buy at all this idea that cancel culture is taking over when a new TV station has been set up, when there are more blogs and digital radio channels than ever before. The idea that you can't have free speech in Britain, I think, is just a nonsense. On the statues, Andre, try not to interrupt me a third time, please.
Shut up.
OK, so Andre's against insulting behaviour. On the statues, I actually think it's better to leave a lot of the statues up, but explain, put more information on them, because I think they are contested and there have been lots of awful figures in history, but it's good to provide the next generation with information and let people make their own mind up. And I think there's a lot of people in the Labour Party that actually don't want to rip down statues. They'd rather put the facts out there, whether it's about the horrors of slavery or modern controversies, and let young people make their own mind up.
Leilani Dowding, cancel culture doesn't exist or it's been exaggerated.
It absolutely does exist. And I think it's funny what he was just saying there about George going on to onto Russia Today, because why would you not? Why would you not go on to other kinds of media? And this is the thing, it's all about Russia and Ukraine right now. Would he go on Chinese media? You're saying you wouldn't go on Chinese media either because of all the crimes that the CCP have committed? I mean, the Chinese government is committing some of the most horrific, heinous crimes right now, and with the Uyghurs and so to say, oh, George Galloway shouldn't be on Russia Today is just ridiculous. And this is a whole thing that only probably someone like him, a lefty, would say.
OK, final thoughts on this, Andre Walker?
Yeah, look, I think that what we've heard from Peter, in addition to the insults, is an argument in favour of boycotts, an argument in favour of cancellation, an argument in favour of not allowing people to listen. Look, I would merrily go and tell the people of Russia, the people of China, the people of any country that I disagreed with them. And what is amazing is this remarkable piety that comes out, which is, I'm allowed to insult, I'm allowed to hurl abuse, I'm allowed to demand that people can't appear on a particular platform, but I'm Mr. Freedom of Speech. Aha, the guy's a liar.
How about this one?
I just want to say, Andre keeps talking about personal abuse.
You started it.
Aha! Andre is obviously...
Play the ball, not the man, gentlemen.
Andre, you're against abuse.
Shut up. Look at your camera.
Andre.
Look at your camera. No. Don't look at me.
Andre, you're against personal abuse. You shout, shut up.
Well, you started it. You started it. You look like Alan Partridge and you've got no personality in real life.
Look, you two...
Mark, I think that says it all.
You are fighting like rats in a sack. This show and this channel is all about free speech. Peter, the clock's against us. Don't worry about Andre. Make your final point.
No, it's all right. I think we'll leave it there. I think Andre is condemned by his own words.
All right. Well, look, my sincere thanks to Leilani Dowding, who is a broadcaster, model and presenter. George, I'm going to ask you to stick around if you've got time, because I'd like to ask you, after this short break, about Lord Frost's comments on a big state. Are you available for the next few minutes?
Yes. Yes, yes.
Wonderful stuff. Well, there you go. So joining us for this next section of the show in our news agenda, Lord Frost has commented that the state is now too big. We'll get the views of George Galloway on that one, plus my amazing panel, who are, I think you'll agree, very diverse in their opinions. So lots to get through. What's your view? Do the left have a problem with freedom of speech? Mark at gbnews.uk. Lots to get through. And I think you'll have noticed we don't do boring. Not on my watch. See you in 2. Welcome back to Mark Dolan tonight, and sparks are flying in the studio. What a fascinating debate we've had, all in relation to whether the left have a problem with free speech. Well, my panel have certainly disagreed on that one. I'll get to your emails on that very, very shortly. But I do want to crack on with our news agenda if I can, because this one is an absolute corker, OK? And let's get to it as quickly as we can. Former Brexit negotiator Lord Frost says that Britain is being overwhelmed by a rising tide of statism, entitlement and dependency. In an article in today's Telegraph, he says that whilst it may appear on the surface that society is getting back to normal after the pandemic, the fact that many people still believe that the government's job is to protect us from every little thing shows that society still has the pandemic mindset. His comments come as the government continues to be criticised for not doing enough to protect the public from the cost of living crisis, and amid reports that the government is set to bow to Labour demands to introduce a windfall tax on energy companies should they not invest how ministers instruct them to. So it all begs the question, is the state now too big? I'll be getting the views of my panel on that one. Peter Edwards, Andre Walker, who we have separated, in the middle, sandwiched in this particular exciting debate, is Francine Lewis. And still down the line, the former Labour and Respect Party MP, George Galloway. George, let me start with you. As a lifelong socialist, do you agree with Lord Frost that the state is now too big?
Well, like the curate's egg, Lord Frost's thesis is good in parts. The state is undoubtedly interfering in too many things that are not its business, and refusing to intervene in things that are. For example, the energy crisis that you have referred to will soon lead to families and businesses, tens of thousands of businesses, being unable to meet their energy bills. And that is a matter for the state. If people are cold, if they're going hungry, if companies are closing and laying off thousands of workers, that is the business of the state. So I'd like to see the state bigger in the energy sector, because I believe that the energy sector should be publicly owned, as it was under both Labour and Conservative governments for most of the post-Second World War period, until the Thatcherism earlier referred to by Andre as his own ideology. Until then, in the post-war settlement, it was generally regarded that big national monopolies should be run by the state for the people of the country. So I want the state to be more active in some things and less active in others. And some of the others we've already spoken about.
Yeah.
The state should not be telling people how they should live their lives, policing their pronouns, policing their use of language, what books they can read, what you can study in your university, who you can come and listen to in your university, and all kinds of other nanny state preoccupations, which are really a displacement activity. The more busy you are on things like that, the more you're asking people to look over there rather than look at the fundamentally important things that unite actually the great majority of people in this country, who all are polled regularly on things like public ownership of the former state-run monopolies. And overwhelmingly, people want the railways. They want the energy sector to be in public hands.
All right, well, I'll take it then, George, that you are a social libertarian but an economic socialist. However, I'll put that point to you, Peter Edwards. I guess there's some common ground there between yourself and George in terms of state ownership. But with the Treasury, Peter, having borrowed £500 billion in the course of the pandemic and with the national debt at in excess of £2 trillion, isn't the cupboard bare? Is there the money for a big state anymore?
Well, the Conservatives are borrowing a lot. That's untrue. I just want to go back to Lord Frost for a moment, because there's quite a rich irony in someone who is a civil servant. Then he went to work for the whisky industry. Then he was a government minister. Now he's a peer in the unelected House of Lords, and he's complaining about the big state. Seems to have done rather well out of the big state. I think it's really...
But what about his wider point that the state is now too big? And my question about the affordability of such a big state?
Well, I think we're in a very difficult financial position. The pandemic has made that worse. We had, essentially, to go back over, the last 10 years or so, we had a period of austerity that choked off economic growth. Then we had a boom period where GDP rose, but average incomes didn't keep pace with that, and the gap between the rich and the poor widened, and I'm talking about maybe between about 2012 and 2016. Then we've had all sorts of economic shocks since the referendum in 2016 and the pandemic on top. And obviously the national debt just keeps growing and growing and growing, well over £1 trillion. I don't buy this idea, and it's a criticism perhaps on the libertarian right that Rishi Sunak is left-wing or socialist. I don't think that at all. The government have done lots of right-wing things, but they are borrowing a lot. And the question is, what are they borrowing it for? They borrowed several £100 billion for furlough. That's now been discontinued, but they still need to pay for all of Boris's, what are called the grand projets, the things like the airports and the Red Wall initiatives, which haven't really got started. So Boris is either going to have to increase spending or break a lot of promises on infrastructure, in my view. OK,
Francine Lewis, is the state too big?
I think it is, yes. I just think it's so hard now for people to live. Our bills are going up constantly. If you've got your own business, all your supplies are going up. I just think it's getting harder and harder. And I feel so sorry for, again, the younger generation. Are they ever going to leave home? I asked that question, are my kids ever going to leave home?
No, I'm not sure they will. I'm sure you've got a lovely residence and they couldn't drag themselves away from your excellent cooking. What about you, Andre? Do you think the state is too big? I think I know the answer to this.
Well, I think it's quite funny because I think there is a debate to be had about what areas of interest the state might be involved in. I mean, some people have mentioned things like running energy and nationalising the railways, but I think the bigger concern is, I remember when I worked for a local authority, I think in 1997 that local authority had 500 members of staff, and when I worked there in I think about 2008, 2009, it had 2,500 members of staff. And you get the sense that it's not that more stuff's being done, it's not that more activities are being undertaken, it's not that more services are being provided to the public, it's just done in a much less efficient way. And so look, if you want 2,500 people working for your local authority, then OK, you can vote for that, but I would suggest if it was the work that 500 people previously did, you've got a major problem.
Yes, I mean, George Galloway, very briefly, if you can, the coalition government in 2010 actually scaled back the size of the public sector and an extra 1 million jobs were created in the private sector. Isn't there a compelling argument to take that route now, given how broke we are as a country?
Well, lots of companies are going bust right now, and they should be helped to stay afloat. They should be assisted by the state. The crash that caused that in 2010 was presided over by Tony Blair, sorry to go back to him, and Gordon Brown. It was their light touch regulation of the banks, they boasted about it, that led to the banks experiencing the collapse here and with the similar policies of Bill Clinton in the United States. So I'm afraid it's the so-called liberal centrists who were the cause of the crash in 2008. The answer is not to sack people. The answer is to make it more possible for private companies to employ more people. And that means a whole raft of economic policies, fiscal policies, that encourage small and medium-sized enterprise and agriculture, by the way. I'm astounded that we're paying people to stop producing food at a time when we're going to drastically require people to produce more food because of the international situation
and
war
on that we can agree. George, the clock's against us.
You did ask me to be
George,
brief.
thank you, George. The clock's against us, but thank you for being so generous with your time, and do join us on the show in the near future. It's been fascinating to hear your thoughts. Do you disagree? Do you agree? Mark at gbnews.uk. Lots more to come from this lively panel. Plus, I have a reality star waiting in the wings for Mark Meets and another game show. See you shortly. Mark, I have so much respect for you, GB News, and your non-Liberal guests tonight. It's heartwarming in these bleak times to see level-headed people from both political sides uniting on television to denounce the increasingly power-crazed, oppressive, vicious, extremist, agenda-pushing mass media. My respect to Mr. Galloway, Mrs. Lewis, Francine Lewis, your guest, and all of your right-minded guests and correspondents. Thank you, Mark and GB News. God bless you. Well, look, thank you, John, for that. Very kind words and high praise indeed. Do lefties have a problem with freedom of speech? Paul says, Mark, when the lefties can't win an argument, they just use a word, racist, homophobic, misogynist, etc., or they just reply nonsense. Well, look, if you actually disagree with what you've heard and you think that cancel culture has been exaggerated, if you are left-leaning and believe that there's no problem with freedom of speech among so-called liberals, then let me know. Mark at gbnews.uk. All opinions are welcome here on my show. Lots to get through. Don't forget, my Mark Meets guest is a huge reality star and, in fact, movie actress as well. She starred alongside Will Ferrell in Elf. Plus, she's done loads of telly. Can't wait for my Mark Meets guest shortly. Also, in the news agenda with my panel, is romance dead? And the latest on Johnny Depp from the Queen of US showbiz. It's the wonderful Kinsey Schofield. We've saved our best till last. A big hour to come. We don't do boring, not on my watch. Here are the headlines with Tamsin.
Mark, thank you. Good evening from the GB newsroom. The MP accused of watching pornography in the Commons says he's resigning. Neil Parish admitted looking at adult material twice in Parliament, once deliberately. A spokesperson for his local Conservative association thanked the MP for his service and said they supported his decision. Mr Parish told the BBC he had a moment of madness and that he's not proud of his actions.
The situation was that funnily enough, it was tractors that I was looking at, and so I did get into another website that had a sort of very similar name, and I watched it for a bit, which I shouldn't have done. But my biggest crime, is that on another occasion I went in a second time.
And that was deliberately?
And that was deliberate.
And was that in the Select Committee or in the Commons chamber?
That was sitting, waiting to vote.
The Prime Minister has told President Zelensky he's more committed than ever to reinforcing Ukraine. In a phone call to his Ukrainian counterpart, he says the UK will continue to provide additional military aid to the country. It's as Ukraine's defence ministry says Russia is increasing the intensity of their offensive in the east of the country. Meanwhile, a Ukrainian army officer says the attacks in the southeastern region are relentless.
Every day there is shelling and artillery training. We wake up not to the sound of an alarm clock, but to the sound of shelling. We will stand here, if necessary, until death, because this is our land, our people, our prestige. But we need a lot of weaponry. This is not the time for such a war. We need heavy weapons, and only then we can fight back.
Ukrainian police say they found a mass grave containing the bodies of men who were apparently bound, gagged and tortured. It's after the US accused Russian President Vladimir Putin of brutality and depravity in his 2-month invasion of the country. Kiev says more than 1,000 bodies have been discovered in or around the town of Bucha so far, where it's alleged Russia has committed numerous war crimes. Moscow rejects the allegation. Meanwhile, the government is investigating reports an injured British man is being held captive by Russia. It's after an unverified video emerged, reportedly showing Andrew Hill being interrogated by Russian forces after being captured in Ukraine. The Foreign Office is urgently seeking more information and is supporting his family. A body has been found by police searching for a 33-year-old woman who went missing in Lancashire a week ago. Katie Kenyon was last seen getting into a Ford Transit van in Burnley 8 days ago. Formal identification is yet to take place, but officers say the family of the mother of two has been informed of the discovery. TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Mark Dolan Tonight.
Do the left have a problem with freedom of speech? Big reaction to my big opinion monologue, which you can find on our GB News Twitter feed at GB News. Good evening, Mark. Owen Dempsey says extremists of all stripes have always had a problem with free speech and thought. History shows us that they are forever telling people what to think, what to say and what to do. David says, Dear Mark, great show and very pleased that you were joined by George Galloway. The most sense came from him as always. Please get him on more often. Well, we always seek diverse voices on this channel and on this programme. It's all about opinions. How about Ian, who says, Hi, Mark. What's that Peter guy talking about? That's Peter Edwards, one of our panellists tonight. Of course, lefty cancellation exists. Just look at how they tried to cancel GB News before it's even launched. Well, here we are. We're live and kicking. How about this from Brian? Andre, your panellist, has been rude and aggressive, not for the first time, to a fellow panellist. But his Labour-loving target is the reason why free speech is in freefall in this country. Thank you for that, Brian. And last but not least, Derek says, Good evening, Mark. Yes, the left do have a problem with free speech. The only way to get rid of this culture is for government to make it impossible for them to thrive. Public bodies should be first in line. NHS, heritage councils, education and more. Well, keep your opinions coming. Mark at gbnews.uk. Really excited about the hour to come in our news agenda. Lots of burning issues of the day, including, is romance dead? We'll talk about online dating. Has the romance gone out of life? Whatever happened to courting? Some people don't even know what the word courting means. Plus, we'll get the latest on the trial of the century between movie star the amazing, the remarkable Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, his ex. We'll have Kinsey Schofield, Queen of US Showbiz News, with us shortly. Lots to get through, plus another game show. But it's time now for Mark Meets, in which I speak to the biggest names in the world of politics, sport, showbiz, music and beyond. Tonight, my guest made a name for herself on the US reality show Mob Wives. This 32-year-old mother has also appeared in the movie Elf and the hit TV series Gossip Girl, The Good Wife and Law and Order. She also travelled across the pond to compete in the 2017 summer series of Celebrity Big Brother. Actress, reality star and model Marissa Jade joins me now. Hi, Marissa.
Hi, how are you?
I'm so well. When you were a little girl, Marissa, was it your dream to be on TV, to be famous?
I think around the time I hit being a teenager, I wanted to get into the world of modeling and acting, but I definitely didn't grow up saying, I need to be a TV star.
How did you get your first break, Marissa?
So I've been in the industry since I was 17. Started off acting, eventually gravitated towards modeling. So I've had my feet wet for a while. You've named a few shows I've been on, movies. And then 2015 came and Mob Wives was presented to me. I started filming like that week and the rest is history.
Well, too right. Tell us about Mob Wives. I know lots of our viewers have been enjoying it on Amazon Prime and watching it online. Tell me about the basic idea of that show.
I guess it's based around our men who we dated, who we're affiliated with, who our family is, and, you know, just the girls, really. Our lifestyle, what we go through, fights, the drama, the laughs. But it's, you know, in New York, a lot of women are surrounded by the world we live in. Or should I say Staten Island, Brooklyn, Queens. So it's just something I was raised around.
For sure. And look, we've just had a bit of a debate in the studio. It got quite feisty, and Mob Wives was very feisty, as was Celebrity Big Brother. And you're quite capable of looking after yourself. You don't mind a scrap, do you?
No, I don't at all.
Where does that come from?
My upbringing, where I was born and raised, we're all relatively the same. Definitely no nonsense people. So I grew up in a world where everybody thinks they're tough. And I kind of had the mentality growing up, well, if you think you're tough, I'm going to show you who's tougher. And I don't know, that was just the norm, It was just norm to be tough out here.
For sure. How has fame changed your life, Marissa?
I don't really think it's changed that much. I mean, yes, you get noticed, there's a little bit more credibility. But I always had genuine love from people, whether it's social media, whether it's walking up to me on the street. So it really wasn't different. Maybe there's a lot more now, being that I've been on a few shows, but I embrace it all. I embrace the love, and I'm a people person, so I have no problem chatting it up with anybody. And, I just live my life.
And what do you make of the culture wars, left versus right, woke campaigners furious that Elon Musk has bought Twitter? Where do you stand in the culture wars?
Can I just I don't really want to get into politics because it's always such a sticky situation with everybody. I am conservative, though. I do have, a lot of core values. I grew up with a lot of core values. I raised my son in the same manner. I don't understand why there's such an issue with Elon buying Twitter, because at the end of the day, everybody wants a voice. And it seems that the people who have been yearning for this voice don't want others to have a voice. They're basically saying, this is the voice, this is the way it has to be. And if you don't agree with us, then we're going to bash you. I have definitely been victim to that for voicing my opinions within the last few years, which really wasn't nice via social media. So I kind of took a step back and, I couldn't believe, I don't really want to get into it because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But at the end of the day, it's we've come to a point where we look at the sky and we know the sky is blue, but the left wants to say it's purple. So because it's purple, or they think it's purple, it's got to be purple. But it's blue. So let's not pretend it's purple because we know it's blue. And I'm just going to leave it there,
And if you don't say the sky is purple, you're a bad person.
Yes. And FYI, the sky is blue.
Nicely done. That's right. You tweeted just a couple of days ago, who would have thought free speech for everyone was a bad thing? I mean, it's the very reason why for years people have been spewing what they've been spewing on this site, to begin with. Bravo, Elon Musk. Of course, that's a debate for another day. How about modelling? I mean, you've worked for some of the biggest designers in the world, including Ralph Lauren. So how did the modelling come about?
So I have really cute feet.
So do I.
And one day someone just told me to be a shoe model. And so I started going for a few auditions, and I wound up modeling for a lot of really well-known name brands as far as shoes go. And I loved working for Ralph Lauren. I've never had a bad experience with any designer that I've worked with.
Please don't tell me they only photographed your feet.
Well, for the most part, it was feet. But yes, they took pictures of the whole thing.
Amazing stuff. And what about the entertainment scene at the moment in the States? I mean, do you feel like things are getting back to normal post-pandemic?
Yeah, I think for sure. They're definitely getting back to normal. I'm sure a few stipulations are in place, but at least we get to work again. I have a few scripts. I really want to get back into acting. So I have a few scripts on the table right now that I have to read and go over and see what the best fit is.
Yeah, what do you look for in a part? I mentioned some of the really big shows that you've been in, as well as that classic Christmas movie, Elf. So what kind of script catches your eye?
I love action movies, action films, and love films. I'm kind of shy away from horror, only because I'm kind of scared of it. I don't really like watching horror movies. So I like to stick with things I know, things I'm comfortable with, things that aren't far off from who I am. I would love to have a British accent, but I'm not there yet. So I don't think I'm ready to jump in another pond that I'm not ready to swim in,
Well, that's right. We could get you some elocution lessons and you could star in Downton Abbey.
Okay, that sounds good.
Would you do that period dress? Listen, it's obviously very exciting. You've got feet in multiple camps, no pun intended in relation to your modelling career, but you are an actress, a reality star, a model, a TV personality. What about reality TV? You were, of course, in the celebrity Big Brother house. Tell me about that experience.
I had a great experience in CBB. It was fun being around like-minded individuals. We all had the same goals at the end of the day. And we all, I think when you are in this industry and you're striving to be what you want to be, everyone understands the meaning of support. So, no one's bashing each other. No one's looking down upon each other. No one's making snood remarks. If anything, they're uplifting you and trying to push you and your confidence to be a better you. So I found in CBB, there was a lot of strong personalities. They all love to act. We obviously had to make do with our time and, create some type of environment that was fun for ourselves, because there was no, phones, TVs, all we had was each other. So we would do a lot of story time. I remember sitting around in a circle with them, and they started the story time, and let's say Paul started the story, and then after a few minutes he would stop and the person next to him would chime in and go into the story, and whether they stayed in the same lane or changed it up for the next person to then create the story. So I watched a few times and I was so nervous. I didn't want to jump in, but I think within a few days I got so comfortable being around them that, my mind just started going and I started telling stories too. And for me, it was a great experience. It opened me up. I mean, I'm very comfortable in my skin. I'm outgoing, maybe semi-shy, hardly, but when it comes to acting or improvising, I guess I am. So it was really nice to be in front of 20 strangers, being able to just, act and be comfortable. It was nice.
Well, I think you came across really well. It was a really good series. It was quite a vintage series. We had ex-East End actor Sean Williamson, celebrity psychic Derek Acora. We had Hollyoaks actor Paul Danan, who you just mentioned, and Sarah Harding, the wonderful Girls Aloud singer, who, of course, tragically died of cancer. What are your memories of the wonderful Sarah Harding?
Oh, Sarah. Sarah was a very sweet soul. When I first met her, see, mind you, I'm from America, so I really didn't do my research on people. And when I was in the house, I didn't know anybody. I just knew them, in passing. I didn't know what they did, what credibility they had, who they were. I had no clue who Sarah was when I met Sarah. Sarah was very timid on the show, actually. She had a lot of stress. I think she wanted to leave the show about 2 or 3 times. I never really dug deep into why, but I tend to help. I'm an empath. I help people. So when I saw that side of her, I would just talk to her and big her up and tell her, don't leave the show. And, you can do this. I don't know what's going on, but, this is a great opportunity, have the strength to do it, yada, yada, yada. I guess a couple of my pep talks helped her because she really didn't go nowhere. And she winds up winning the show. But no, I had when she said she was a singer, it still didn't register. We did a task and she had to sing. And she wasn't as, what can I say? I didn't know who she was, I didn't know how big she was or what she was attached to. And, when you got out, you were like, oh, that's Sarah. Sarah was kind of like a Spice Girl, but a different group.
Very much so.
Yeah. It was nice to meet her. It was nice to meet everyone. And, rest in peace, Sarah. I hate that
No, absolutely. We share that sentiment, Marissa. And you came to the UK to do that show. How did you find life in the UK? Do you enjoy Britain?
I had a really good time. I heard, Britain, or I didn't know, but Britain supposedly doesn't have the best of weather. But I feel like the month that I was out there was pretty sunny. So I'd like to think I brought the sun out there.
And you've done it again tonight. Marissa, what a treat to have you on the show. Come and see us in the studio when you're in the UK.
Yes, I'd love to. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic stuff. Do check out Marissa Jade. She's everywhere on social media. She's the queen of social media. Instagram, Twitter, you name it. You'll find out what she's up to. Modelling, acting, reality. She's done it all. My thanks to Marissa Jade. Lots more to come. Very excited about our news agenda with my panel. Lots of burning issues to get through, including, is romance dead? Also, we'll find out about the animals used by the military to win wars. An amazing historical story. Can't wait for that one. Plus, should Prince William save the monarchy? We'll get to that very shortly as well. But next, the queen of US showbiz and royal reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Plus, more from my panel. See you shortly. Is the state too big? A fascinating response to this from Marjorie. Dear Mark, I was halfway through the second paragraph of David Frost's Telegraph article when your programme came on. I'm so glad that you interrupt the Telegraph for me. Very honoured, Marjorie. I finally finished the whole article a minute ago, having read bits more than once. There are echoes of Margaret Thatcher in there. The whole theme was so right for now. Stand up and take the pain now. Things will only get better. Marjorie, thank you for your email and for watching the show. Look, we'll get to more of your opinions very, very shortly, but lots to get through in our news agenda. But first, US news with the queen of American showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Hi, Kinsey.
Mark, some fireworks on the show today.
Absolutely. And the sparks are about to fly once again now that you've joined us. It's all happening in the trial of the century. Johnny Depp, movie star, versus his ex-wife, movie star Amber Heard. Any idea who's winning?
I mean, public perception is definitely Johnny Depp. Just to give you an example, Starbucks here in Los Angeles did a tip jar, and there were two jars outside of the drive-thru. One said Johnny Depp, the other said Amber Heard. Johnny Depp's was full of cash and tips for the Starbucks employees, and Amber Heard's was absolutely empty. But I do think that those baristas got in trouble because it was quickly removed, and I think Starbucks is trying to distance themselves from that tip jar. But yeah, only in LA would you see something like that. But I do think in the court of public perception that Johnny Depp is still leading in regards to this trial. There was also a piece in the New York Post this week that said even if he loses this trial, he has won back his reputation. So maybe this was the right strategy and maybe this was the right move for him. Dior is seeing an increase in their sales for his cologne, a ridiculous, unbelievable increase in sales, and streaming services have seen an increase in people streaming Johnny Depp movies. So, I think that maybe this was the right call for him if really his reputation was all he wanted back at the end of the day.
Yes, and at the risk of sounding shallow, Kinsey, Johnny Depp's looking really good at the moment. He looks like a movie star in that court.
Flirt alert. Yeah, he's so handsome. And it is fun to see the different ways that they dress, because you'll notice one day he wore a bee on his tie. And then the next day, Amber Heard wore a bee on her tie. So a lot of behind the scenes gossip happening from people, trial watchers, trying to figure out what the strategy is behind that. One day he'll wear his hair in a ponytail, and then the next day all of a sudden she's wearing her hair in a ponytail. So a lot of discussion amongst trial watchers about the wardrobe and how they carry themselves and how they hold themselves within the courtroom.
We've heard some pretty unedifying stories in relation to Johnny Depp, drunkenness, possible violence, of course, drug use, and even drinking pints of wine. I don't know if you've ever had a pint of wine, but the issue is that this is priced into Johnny Depp's brand, isn't it? We know he's a bad boy.
I have to correct you. It's a mega pint. The attorney asked Johnny if it was a mega pint, and Johnny was like, a mega pint. Yeah, I mean, exactly. I think of that song, "Whoa, Black Betty," anytime I look at Johnny Depp in the movie Blow, walking down that airport, like, fierce. So it is really his brand. And so it's not necessarily shocking to hear all these details. And just because you are a drug addict, which, he says he's not, but if you are, if there are drug issues, if there is alcoholism, that does not make you an abuser. And I think that his team would do really well to hit that nail towards the closing statements. Let's say he does abuse alcohol. Let's say he has a problem with drugs. That does not necessarily make the man an abuser. And I also think there's a real lack of evidence there in regards to, we have Amber secretly recording so many incidents between the two of them. There is verbal abuse clearly on both sides, but with a woman that's constantly secretly recording your relationship, why do we not have any evidence of a physical altercation?
And why is American public opinion not supportive of Amber Heard? What is it that the public don't like about this woman?
I don't think that it's that we don't like her. I just don't think we like the situation. It doesn't feel sincere. We heard testimony this week where she was asking for $14 million untaxed to divorce Johnny Depp and stay quiet and not to cause controversy. Americans, we hear that and we think that there is an ulterior motive. She also wanted all of the penthouses, her friends that were staying in penthouses, for free. She wanted them to continue to be able to live that lifestyle. So it just feels like an ulterior motive. But at the end of the day, I think most people realize that these are two individuals that together were extremely toxic. They've both made mistakes. Nobody's an innocent party. I mean, Johnny Depp does not look like he's got his hands clean. So I think that we're critical of both. But in the court of public opinion, Johnny seems to lead. Yeah, let's bring my panel in if we can. We've got Peter Edwards. We've also got Francine Lewis. And we've actually got Andre Walker, who I'm told had a mega pint of red wine before he came on the show. We're just loading up the shot now. Let me ask you, first of all, Francine, actually, do you think that Johnny Depp will bounce back from this come what may, as suggested by Kinsey?
I don't know if he's going to bounce back completely. But it's just like what Kinsley said, just because he's known as a bad boy, that does not make him a wife beater. And the thing is, there is a lot of talk about that Amber is now provoking him. And I don't know if she's trying to make him to be this, she's really trying to ruin him now. And I think people can see that. I mean, he's spoken calmly. He's spoken very, what's the word? Eloquently. And I think he's come across actually quite well. But I don't think she's coming across quite well at all. But we haven't seen her speak yet. We see that on Monday, if I'm right. Is that right, Kinsley?
I don't know if it's Monday, but we are anticipating her testimony coming up soon.
Oh, I thought it was Monday.
Yeah, I mean, Andre, he's the bad boy of Hollywood. You're the bad boy of Westminster. What's your view on this?
Get out of it. Well, do you know something? I've not followed it at all, took absolutely no interest in it until I met up with a group of friends today, and they were telling me about how it's absolutely fascinating. You've really got to watch it, and kind of nobody's come out of it particularly well. Look, these are people, I imagine, having not watched it, these are people who are fairly overprivileged, fairly highly strung. You don't get to that position unless you're pretty intense. And so I imagine it's one to watch, but beyond that, I have to say I'm going to have to watch it after this show's finished.
But can you come back from this? I don't know. It's to be called a wife beater. I think that's pretty, very harsh. It's like Will Smith come back from what he's done. I don't know.
But Peter Edwards, it feels like it's different rules in Hollywood.
Hollywood is certainly different, but I was just checking some of the detail because this has been going on for years. Johnny Depp lost in the High Court in London against the Sun newspaper, which found, and the London court said he had shown physical aggression towards Amber Heard. So I think, where's your original question was, where's public sympathy? Well, my sympathy, and I think British sympathy, is certainly with Amber Heard.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Well, let's move on because that one will run and run. We'll catch up on the latest in a week's time if we can, Kinsey. Meanwhile, actress and director Olivia Wilde has been shocked after being served with legal papers whilst on stage presenting her new movie. Images of an embarrassed Wilde holding a personal and confidential envelope went viral. Tell me more about this. What a shocking story, Kinsey.
Right. She's said to be mortified. She was in a relationship with Jason Sudeikis. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
We're very familiar. He's, of course, the star of this really, really big show on Apple TV Plus, which is about football, an American football coach working in the UK. I've completely forgotten what it's called because I only watch GBNews.
Yeah, Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso.
And, so they were in a relationship for about, actually, I'm spacing how long they were in a relationship. They do have 2 children. And she apparently... things when she started working with Harry Styles started to blossom. She worked with Harry Styles, a movie called Don't Worry, Darling, that's coming out. And she was actually presenting a preview to this movie at Cinecon in front of 4,000 people when this was presented to her. It was paperwork in regards to their child custody agreement. And people are really lashing out at Jason Sudeikis for embarrassing her publicly. But in reality, he has no control over where and when a process server serves this person. And so he feels really, really guilty about it and wants it known that he had nothing to do with the timing and where it was presented. So I feel kind of guilty for the both of them in this instance.
Yeah,
I think Harry Styles fan did it to embarrass
you had to feel for her. But my goodness, what an uber Hollywood couple that is. Olivia Wilde and the One Direction superstar. That's quite a showbiz combination, isn't it? Harry Styles.
Absolutely. But it does make you wonder if a Harry Styles fan was the process server, just trying to get back at Olivia Wilde for stealing her man.
Almost certainly. A professional Will Smith impersonator, Kinsey, has revealed that his popularity and income have nearly doubled following the notorious slap at this year's Oscars. So remind us of the story. First of all, what happened at the Oscars?
Oh, man. Yeah. I mean, Will Smith, surprising everybody, just 20 minutes before he accepted his award, jumped on stage and smacked Chris Rock for a bald joke about his wife. Chris Rock is said to have had no idea that Jada Smith suffered from alopecia. So, Will Smith was allegedly trying to defend his wife, but it's almost a career killer for him. Again, I think he's another one that will come back inevitably, but he's suffering from some embarrassment right now. And what's so funny to me is this man, Shad Ellis, he's 43 years old. Mark, he lives in Bedford, England, and he makes money as a Will Smith impersonator. He's been doing it for 25 years. He charged $750, for events, weddings, bar mitzvahs. This was his gig, but now he's working overtime. He's working double and he's being able to double his price. He said it's been a really lucrative business for him. He bought his first house at 21 and he drives a nice car because he pretends to be Will Smith. So, they say everything happens for a reason.
Absolutely. And he probably charges extra to slap his clients. It is remarkable that the lookalike does so well. We're joined by the woman of 1,000 voices, Kinsey, and that's Francine Lewis, who has starred on national television doing her amazing impersonations. Do you find that Francine, certain celebrities come into the public eye and it's actually good news for you because you do their voice?
Definitely, especially when they've got certain mannerisms or they're quite big characters. It's like, wow, because there's not as many big characters for females as there are males on TV. So, yeah, when there's somebody who's a little bit out there, it's absolutely brilliant for me, someone like me.
I mean, the issue is politicians, you get the voice of a politician and you're praying that they win the next election, otherwise you've lost a gig, haven't you, Francie?
Yes, and also when they die, it becomes really hard. Like, as I said, I was doing Dot Cotton for years since I was a kid, and like when she died, I thought, can I still go? Oh, I say, and it's hard. So I think when they die, it's annoying.
Do you do any American characters?
Oh yes, I love the Kardashians. Kylie, who's very. I just want to say that everything's cool. I'm a billionaire and I'm just enjoying time with Stormy and my new little boy. And I just love doing Courtney because she has such an amazing voice. It's so monotone, and I love it.
I tell you, you don't need a guest budget, not when Francine Lewis is with us. Brilliant stuff. Well, look, here's our final story, and I want to get to this one if we can, Kinsey, because it's very important, really, for the UK. Prince William is said to have held a crisis meeting with aides as he plans to actually roll out a palace revolution to modernise the monarchy. These talks come after the future of the monarchy and the Commonwealth came under scrutiny following the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge's 8-day tour of the Caribbean. Can William save the monarchy? Do you think he's the man to modernise it, Kinsey?
I think that both Prince William and the Duchess of Cambridge are two of the most important assets when it comes to the British royal family. They are, level-headed. They are, lovable. They're a beautiful couple. They have the sweetest children. And, they've stayed out of any and all controversy. They stay out of trouble. So I do think that they're much more likable characters than Prince Charles and Camilla. And I think that, we obviously fell in love thanks to Princess Diana with Prince William. And it's just easier to imagine him on the throne and imagine the kind of leadership that he would bring. I think Prince Charles will be a fine king, but I do think that Prince William is going to be highly celebrated and people are going to look forward to his leadership because he is just a much less polarizing character with a much cleaner background. And, people love his wife.
Yes, of course they do. She's the picture of elegance, integrity and quiet dignity, isn't she? Kinsey, do you take the view that Charles and William have seen their bond deepen because of all of the attacks from Hollywood from Harry and Meghan? Has it brought father and son closer together?
I do think that that's the case. How could that not be the case? I'm sure that there are plenty of strategy meetings behind the scenes with how to combat some of the content that's come out of the States and what's to come in Prince Harry's book at the end of the year, which will be competing with mine, by the way, Ours for Revenge Dress. But I would say that it's in Prince Charles's best interest to align himself as much as he can with Prince William because he's so much more likable than Prince Charles is.
Yeah. What do you know about the nature of William's relationship with his father, Charles? Have they always been close?
I think when Princess Diana was alive, she was really his confidant. So he knew a lot about what was going on that did not reflect very well on his father. And I think Prince William sided with his mother a lot because he knew that his mother was hurting. But as they've gotten older and as Princess Diana's, her death, unfortunately, I think that they have bonded immensely over that. And I think that they've bonded over the fact that they are both the heirs to the throne. How can you not?
Yes, I suppose it will be something of a partnership, won't it, between the Prince and King Charles?
Absolutely. I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, what do you think? Andre, you live just down the road from Windsor Castle, so you know the Windsors well. They're basically neighbours, aren't they? Do they ever come around for a cup of sugar?
Oh, no, we get on the beer together, sometimes me and Charles.
What about Andy? Do you ever go out on the beers with Andy?
No, you're all right. I mean, some things are a bit much even for me. I think, one of the things that's obviously interesting about Prince William and Prince Charles, the way they've done this swap, where Prince Charles will stay in Highgrove and Prince William will take over Windsor Castle. I think that's quite a good thing because Charles wasn't intending to use Windsor particularly. But I think there's a critical thing here. The Queen is all about, and I'm not being disrespectful, the unity, the kind of baby kissing, the events type side of the monarchy, whereas Prince Charles is much more interested in the straight-up policy, ideas of pushing forward things like architecture. Remember, you can say whatever you want about his support for organic food, but he put his money where his mouth is and quadrupled the earnings of the Duchy of Cornwall by coming up with these Duchy originals. And so I think he's going to be good behind the scenes, and I think Prince William's the public face. But nobody really expects Prince Charles to be the man who sort of wanders around and gives the royal family, to use this phrase, the X factor that perhaps has existed with actual monarchs in the past. But the reality is, when you're talking about family and a group of people, the game will change based on who's available. And so I don't see any reason why Charles wouldn't be quite quiet, stay principally in Westminster doing his work. When I say Westminster, I mean his house in Westminster rather than the Palace of Westminster. Do his work there whilst Prince William goes out and does the public stuff.
Do you think, Peter Edwards, that Charles would be willing to dilute his role as king in order to accommodate William and William's vision for the monarchy long term?
I don't know about dilute, but I certainly think he's changing it, and that will probably, you know, we all want the Queen, obviously, to live forever, but she won't. And I think Prince Charles has kind of set out his vision of what he called a slimmed-down monarchy, and that's not just because of Prince Andrew, it's fewer of the cousins having a frontline role, but also, remember, years ago, Prince Charles said he wanted to be defender of the faiths, plural, as well, plus the business interests and promoting, eventually old-fashioned architecture and organic food. So, yeah, I think he does have quite a clear vision of the monarchy that's probably a bit smaller, but I'm sure it'll be very different to that of Prince William. And some of it, briefly, kind of goes to generational, doesn't it? Because people like all of us, we can perhaps empathise a bit more with Prince William just because of his age. He's closer to our generation.
Too right. What do you think, Francine? Will King Charles be a good king?
I do. I mean, I love Charles. I do. I think King Charles would be lovely. I love the monarchy. I love the Queen. I really do like, you know, I love William and Kate, and I do think they are the future monarchy and the new faces of royalty.
Any royalty impressions?
No, but obviously everyone does the Queen.
See? Unbelievable, even when she's not trying. Kinsey, you never have to try. You're a natural. Can't wait to catch up in a week's time. If you want to get the latest royal exclusives, go to Kinsey's brilliant website, To Die For Daily. Plus, her book on Diana, a beautifully illustrated book, is out later this year. And Kinsey joins us in the studio this June here in the UK. Can't wait for that. So, lots more to come, a very short break. But after this, another great British game show. And is romance dead? See you shortly. On Prince William, Marion has said, please, please, Prince William, save us from having a republic run by politicians who swill beers and eat pizza, eat birthday cake, watch porn, and those Legs 11 buttes. Fed up of the zoo involving all of them, SNP and Liberals. What state would this country be in if any of them had free reign? Once again, great show, Mark. That's from Marion in Scotland. And Marion, what a beautifully and wonderfully well-written email. Thank you for that. Your emails, as you know, are the best bit of my show. By the way, really excited. Let me tell you about tomorrow's show. In the Big Question, the age of marriage is to be raised to 18 in England and Wales from 16. But I'll be asking, is marriage still a good idea? Is it still worth it? And do you want to know who we'll be debating that with? The Crankies and the Hamiltons. Live on tomorrow's show. You won't want to miss that, let me tell you. Now to another of our brilliant viral videos. And here's one for holiday makers. We can all relate to this one. Just when you are relaxing, lounging in the sun, a snake comes towards you. That's right, a snake. Better get rid of it so it doesn't hurt anyone. So you literally hurl the snake at someone else who's relaxing on the beach. Not very nice, I think you'll agree. Nothing scares me more than snakes, let me tell you. I love that video. Now to our second viral video of the day. This one is for all the dog lovers out there. This dog clearly getting into the golf, but he's not too sure whether the ball is on the telly or real life outside the window. Look at this.
Cute.
There you go, he's looking for the ball. He's off to the window now. Where's the ball? I think it's gone in the bunker. Let's have another look at this. Just watch how he jumps his head. Fantastic stuff. With a quick bark, and off he goes. Tiger Woods with 4 legs. Now, men have traditionally taken the lead when it comes to dating, but a new study suggests this is changing. According to the University of Kansas in America, only a third of dates now involve a man asking a woman out, paying and initiating sex. The report also says that modern-day hookup culture, where the emphasis is on sex without dating, is breaking down the behavioural norms that have existed since the 1920s. Peter, is romance dead?
No, I don't think it's dead at all. I thought you were going to ask me something very personal or existential there. No, I don't think it's
we'll
dead
come
at
to
all.
that.
But every generation finds its own way of doing things. And I think, to be frank, when every week the media is filled with stories of sexual harassment, and it's obviously good that women feel confident enough to speak up and that the veil has been lifted on some of these appalling issues, quite frankly. But I think there's a knock-on effect that it changes people's behaviour in society, and perhaps society is, at the moment, a lot more cautious.
Yeah, I mean, Francine, I reckon this is probably the wrong time to ask you about romance.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. But
Are you going to plead the Fifth Amendment on that one?
Can I just say, I do think, and it's so sad, but I do think romance is dead. I don't think men know how to woo women anymore. I don't think they know how to wine and dine them. And I don't think they're bothered to do that. They don't have to. Like you said, there's social media now. So, they get to know each other via texts and, FaceTime. It's not take her out, take her somewhere nice. And I think it's so nice for a man to pay. I mean, you might think that's really bad and really sexist, but if I went on a date and the guy expected me to go Dutch or pay, I would never see him again.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think it's rude. I mean, it's old-fashioned, it's chivalry, isn't it? I think it's manners, actually.
I think it's manners, and I think you need to I think it's really important. Like, I have a son, and I try to install those things into him. You take a girl out, you pay for it. I just think it's nice.
I heard a shocking story about Tinder, and a young woman had hooked up with some guy on Tinder, which is the dating app on your phone. It connects to somebody that's in your area. You see a photograph of them. The algorithm connects you. And it's pretty clear what the rules of engagement are. You're going to get down and dirty, Andre Walker, OK? Except that after they had consummated their passion for each other, this guy was back on his phone looking for the next hookup.
Oh,
right?
nice.
She'd not even left the bedroom. And that's what it's come to now.
But again, with the phone...
Transaction.
Yeah, exactly. But the phones, they kill romance. All you see is people in restaurants, they're sitting together opposite each other and they're both on their phone. They don't even talk to each other.
Yeah. Andre, what's your preferred platform? Grindr or Twitter? Tinder? Guardian. By the way, you know what you should do? You should go on Guardian Soulmates and just throw a cat among the pigeons. You might get hooked up with Peter Edwards.
Let me tell.
I'm not on Guardian Soulmates.
Let me tell you. My idea of at the end of something to say after a romantic evening for two is put your clothes on, love your taxis here.
Oh,
how romantic!
I'll tell you what. I was watching Philomena Kunk the other day, and she said the definition of an old romantic was when your dad bought black magic from the petrol station for your mum, and it wasn't even her birthday.
That's exactly right.
That is romance as far as
I remember that. Listen, do email in with your stories of romance. Is it dead, really? What do you think? How about Hugh, who says, hello, Mark, great show as always. Regarding dating before the internet, whatever happened to putting on your lucky underpants, a splash of Paco Rabanne, and going out, finding a lovely girl, giving your best lines a run out with your fingers crossed and some old chat. Hugh, what a charmer you are. You could have me any day. Look, lots more to get through just before we go, particularly our Great British Game Show. This week marks 4 years since the release of the 636th episode of The Simpsons. That's right, 636 episodes, which made it the series with the highest number of episodes in history. They will get to 1,000, won't they? But of course, The Simpsons is not the only iconic TV series to have graced our screens over the years. But can you guess how many episodes a variety of other TV shows have run for? Let's play a game of I'm Having an Episode. And let's start with Fawlty Towers. How many episodes of Fawlty Towers?
6.
Or I'd say more than that. 12.
I think it's famously 6.
You can probably do all the characters in that show, Francine. It is 12. It was 2 series of 6. And I think that's where you went wrong. How about Blackadder, starring Rowan Atkinson? How many episodes? About the same, do you think?
Yeah,
there were
2 series?
25.
4 series and a slightly forgotten Millennium special.
Yes, that's exactly right. Well,
what that adds up to, I'm not sure.
Do you want to guess?
Or if you say 6 a series, 25.
Any other offers on that? Higher, lower?
I'll go for 24 then.
I'm going higher.
What are you going?
I'm going 36.
Well, the points go to Peter, 27.
Ah.
How many
You should've just
episodes
gone one more
of
than
Friends? How many episodes of Friends?
Oh, there's
150,000.
hundreds.
Too many.
Yeah, there's too many. I would say, God, it's got to be in its thousands, isn't it?
What do you reckon, Friends?
I reckon 250.
300, yeah, no idea.
No, I think it's going to be 500 and
Let
more
me
up.
tell you that Peter's smashing this, 236.
No!
OK, let's
watched a
power
lot of
through
telly.
these now. Let's power through these. Game of Thrones.
80.
Very good, very close, 73. Breaking Bad.
4 series. I think each one was 26. So does that take you to 104?
You might have overshot yourself there, 62. How about the US Office?
Oh, again, that was quite a lot.
Now, remember, the Americans make more.
There's like 8 series of it or something. It's like 60 or something.
I'd say about 80.
Peter?
40.
201. And finally, last but not least, how many episodes of the UK Office by comparison?
6 and a Christmas special. Is that 2 series of 6 and a Christmas special?
There you go.
13.
Well done. Well, look, good enough.
Well
14 is the
done.
right answer. Thanks to my brilliant panel. Thank you to you for your company. Don't forget the Hamiltons and the Crankies on tomorrow's show. And stick around because I'm doing headliners next, thanks to my amazing panel, but most importantly to you.
Coming up on Dan Wootton Tonight, former Dancing on Ice judge and one of the few celebrities speaking out in support of vaccine freedom, Jason Gardner, exposes the toxic truth behind the Be Kind telly elite and reveals how his traumatic experiences forced him off-grid. Plus, I'll sit down with Will Witt, the Gen Z conservative whose viral videos could be our best chance of saving our youth from wokeism. You'll also get plenty of unfiltered opinion from Neil Oliver, Positive Professor Carol Sikora, and my superstar panel. Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the iNewspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and broadcaster and campaigner Lalani Dowding. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain every Saturday and Sunday from 2 p.m. A news hour that comes with a trigger warning. Scorching hot opinions.